Hello and welcome to another Mr. Carter Science Special. In this video we'll be looking at kidney transplants. As always, keep your eyes open for the specifications and the learning outcomes. By the end of this video you should be able to explain what's involved in a kidney transplant. You should be able to describe the advantages and disadvantages of kidney transplants, and you can even discuss the problems associated with rejection. A diseased kidney can be replaced with a single healthy kidney from a donor. This is called a kidney transplant. The new kidney is joined to the blood vessels in the groin, and if all goes well, will function normally to excrete urea and excess mineral ions and excess water. So if your original two kidneys do not function anymore, then a transplanted kidney can be inserted here in the groin. It can be joined up to the femoral vein and artery, and the urethra can be joined directly to the bladder as shown in this diagram. You can see on this graph that not enough registered donors and fewer road traffic accidents due to safer cars have led to a decrease in the availability of organs available for transplant. You can see here that the number of people needing transplants is increasing, but the number of transplants that are being carried out is remaining rather stable, so there is a large gap between the two. So obviously carrying a donor card is a very important thing, so that if the worst does happen, then somebody else might benefit from one of your kidneys. If you do have a kidney transplant, one of the biggest issues is rejection. So perhaps you can try explaining how and why a kidney transplant might be rejected from a recipient patient, and this could be a 6-mark question. Try and use this diagram here. To give you a little bit of help, let me explain the diagram. So the first person we've got here in red is our donor, and this is a person who is going to donate the kidney, and you can see the line in blue showing you that that kidney is now in the recipient patient here. But the key to this is to notice the structure of the cells and compare the cells in the kidney from a donor to the cells in the kidney of a recipient. In particular, you need to think about the little proteins that stick out of the cell membrane called antigens. Now I've shown the two different antigens there by showing the donor antigens as being a triangular shape and the recipient's antigens being sort of a semicircle shape, and clearly they are not a close match. They are not similar to each other. So the recipient's white blood cells will recognize this foreign antigen, and in particular it's the lymphocyte cells that will produce antibodies, and there's our lymphocytes producing all these antibodies here. And these antibodies will travel in the blood and they will bind with the complementary foreign antigen on the donor kidney cells. So the donor kidney cells and the donor kidney itself are destroyed, and therefore the donor kidney is rejected, and the patient must return to using dialysis. So how would you turn this information into a 6-mark answer? We'll pause the video at the moment, copy down the gap fill, and see whether you would be able to get 6 marks on this exam question. And here's the answer. As with any transplant, the new kidney is at risk of rejection, and this is because the new kidney has different or foreign antigens on its surface. Antigens are proteins on the surface of a cell, and these foreign antigens are different to the recipient's own antigens. These foreign antigens will be recognized by the body's white blood cells and initiate an immune response. The lymphocytes will produce specific antibodies which will destroy the foreign antigens and the foreign cells. The donor kidney has been rejected. Preventing rejection of a transplanted organ is clearly important. So how can we reduce the risk of rejection? Well, to reduce the risk of rejection, the match between the antigens of the donor and the recipient must be as close as possible. This is called tissue typing. Often family members will be the donors, so the antigens will be a close match. The recipient is given immunosuppressant drugs to suppress and reduce the immune system and decrease the risk of rejection. Immunosuppressant drugs are improving so much that having a really close match between the donor and the recipient is becoming less important. Patients must take immunosuppressant drugs for the rest of their lives, and this obviously puts them at an increased risk of catching infectious diseases. On average, a kidney transplant will last for around 9 years. Once the organ fails, a patient must resume dialysis and wait for a new donor. And it's this limited life of the kidney transplant which is leading scientists to carry out research into embryonic stem cells. And in 2011, scientists grew functioning kidney tissue from embryonic stem cells. Perhaps in the future, whole kidneys can be grown, possibly without the foreign antigens that trigger the immune response. Patients would then not need the immunosuppressant drugs. The big advantage of a kidney transplant is that it keeps the patient alive. But especially compared to dialysis, there are many other advantages that we need to discuss. A donated kidney may last for many years, for example. Patients can lead a relatively normal life, moving around freely, which you can't do if you're undergoing dialysis treatment, particularly if 3 times a week you must be in hospital for up to 8 hours at a time. There's no build-up of toxins, urea, in the blood. This prevents high blood pressure as well because there's no build-up of salts. You don't need to restrict the diet or restrict fluid intake or waste time on dialysis. Dialysis itself may cause blood clots, so obviously it's an advantage to have a kidney transplant. Dialysis may cause infections, and with dialysis the blood may not clot properly due to the anti-clotting drugs you may take. And dialysis has a very, very high cost, so a transplant is cheaper and more advantageous for all of those reasons. However, there are many disadvantages to having a kidney transplant. There is, for example, a shortage of donors. The tissue types or the antigens of a patient and the donor need to be a match. The size and the age of the organ must be suitable. The organ may be rejected and need to be removed. The patient will also need to take immunosuppressant drugs for the rest of their life, another big disadvantage. Surgery puts a strain on the patient, and use of general anaesthetic during surgery carries its own risks as well. And there is a very high initial cost, particularly for the NHS or the private patient. However, I think on balance, most people would agree that a kidney transplant is much better than dialysis. I hope you've enjoyed watching this short video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and comment below and let me know what you've learned from this video. Thank you very much for your time.